let's go over to the losers of this trade deadline. There were a bunch of them. I ended last, so John, is there a loser that points out to you, or you want to point out in regards to the trade deadline?
This is kind of some vengeance for me against Timberwolves fans, but the T-Wolves are absolutely losers in this. Obviously, they were losers in the Rudy Gobert stuff, and I said that at the time. And if you're a Timberwolves fan watching this, then especially if you're one of the ones who commented on a Rudy Gobert video and said that I was dead wrong and that there was absolutely a reason they should trade 4 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert, including guys like Walker Kessler, who are now just saying, like, kind of balling out. Yeah, the T-Wolves are terribly run. This is another instance of that. In one of our group chats with one of our friends, Matt, we just kind of dove into the history of the Timberwolves trades over the last however many years, and it's pitiful. Like, if you're a Timberwolves fan, I'm sorry. Like, I genuinely am sorry for you because you deserve better, but I would suggest you maybe jump ship because that team is just so terribly run. I understand why they traded D'Lo. You want to make room for Anthony Edwards to be the guy, the singular perimeter creator. I understand that. That said, you traded him and a couple other key pieces, and you got Mike Conley. That's it. Like, and they got what, a pick maybe? Did they even get a pick?
They got 3 second-round picks. So they did.
Okay, but I don't care about second-round picks.
But
personally.
yeah, they did not get a first-round pick. At least for rendering something in this deal.
Yeah, like I was shocked that like the Lakers didn't throw that other first round pick they've been holding on to, like over to the Timberwolves. I don't know. It's just crazy to me that the Timberwolves are now like they have no first round picks for the next whatever many years. I mean, they do have some because of the stipend rule, but or Stipien rule. But, like your team got worse because D'Lo, as weird as the fit was with him and Anthony Edwards and all that team, he's better than Mike Conley. So your team talent-wise got worse. And I don't know. The T-Wolves are a weird team, but they're absolute losers of the deadline and of that Rudy Gobert trade.
Yeah, we almost forgot about them and our disappointments last episode. I know they're in the play-in tournament right now, but like we'll see because like I said, Golden State kind of maybe reloading. Portland made some moves. Pelicans just need to stay healthy. Obviously, like those are the teams fighting them in the Jazz and Thunder. I know, and the Lakers. They're also outside the play-in, fighting their way in. And like we mentioned, Lakers just made a bunch of moves. And we were seeing with the Thunder and Jazz, they've been accumulating all this talent that it's kind of starting to show. They're not obviously not championship level, but it's hard for them to tank, without playing those guys. But regardless, we'll see. Timberwolves fans, like I'm with you though. Major losers in regards to the trade deadline and just the whole grasp of. And we talked about it. I made this statement in our group chat. Just they really haven't been the same since the Jimmy Butler incident. That trade was okay, but then and this is where he deep dived with Dario Saric, like left in free agency. He was like one of the main pieces for that trade. And then I think they got rid of Rocco eventually. So, yeah, I mean, I know Philly didn't keep Jimmy, but it was they have not really recovered. Like you mentioned, lucked into Anthony Edwards. Not really luck, but they had number 1 overall pick. They had their pick of the litter. It's not like they had to maneuver a draft board. And with Karl Anthony Towns, kind of the same thing. He was he was kind of the unanimous number 1 guy that season too. So. Sorry, Timberwolves fans.
I just want to say on them being a disappointment on the season 2, I totally called this as well. Like everybody was freaking out saying that Rudy Gobert was going to be some massive game changer. I just got to toot my own horn here for a little bit because I didn't only do it on this podcast. I actually got invited to go on another NBA podcast, and I went over there and we did a predictions on who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to do terrible. I said they were both Nets fans, and I said that I thought the Nets were going to collapse this season and ship everything away, and that's what happened. But I think that was kind of predictable. Like most people knew that the KD Kyrie stuff was going to boil over at some point and completely collapse. Unfortunately for those two guys, they thought that they with Ben Simmons that they were going to compete for a title. That's what they said. But on the T-Wolves thing, though, I specifically said I thought maybe they could be a decent regular season team, but I predicted that if they made the playoffs, they would get bounced in the first round by whoever they played. And the fact that now they're like might not even make the playoffs, I don't know. I feel some sweet justice about this because so many people wanted to tell me that I was wrong about this Rudy Gobert thing, and I don't know, just feels good to be right.
Yeah. Just for context, as of this recording on Friday, the 10th, they are sitting at 8th place. But like I said, it is real tight. They are only half a game behind Golden State at number 9. Portland's a game and a half behind at 10. And then Utah's 2 games behind. Utah and OKC are 2 games behind. The Lakers are 4 games behind the Wolves, Timberwolves. So who knows? Maybe Mike Conley gives them the boost they need to stay alive in this play-in race. But yeah, not a great outlook for them. I'm going to throw in the Knicks. I already kind of alluded to it when we were talking about. I just didn't get the Josh Hart deal. And he's kind of like an undersized wing. And they already have Jalen Brunson. I don't know what the Knicks are doing. I feel like they're trying to tread water, still be relevant. Yes, they'll probably make the playoffs, but I think also we can agree East has gotten worse. Obviously Brooklyn, we're going to count them out of the championship equation. I just feel like the East just more top heavy. But yeah, I got to throw the Knicks in just because I like Julius Randle. He's good, but and RJ Barrett, but I just don't think those two guys are good enough pieces. And Jalen Brunson it could be a great number 2, I think, for a championship team. But those there's no clear number 1, clear elite guy that they can lean on consistently. RJ Barrett's very consistent. We saw what happened with Julius Randle in the playoffs, and then we see these Tom Thibodeau teams, they usually burn out too. So maybe Cam Reddish also wasn't getting a lot of minutes in the rotation. So maybe just the fact that they're getting a guy that Thibs will actually use, maybe that's what's going to help. So, yeah, sorry to kick y'all. You're kind of down, Knicks fans, but yeah, and especially surrendering a first round pick, that also hurts this upcoming year. So anyway,
I just want to add on the Knicks. I don't know. Personally, I think that obviously they need a number 1, right? They absolutely need a number 1. But to me, and this just might be, I might be crazy here, but I don't even think that any of the guys they actually have are a number 2. If you're talking about a serious title contender, because when I'm thinking of the elite number 2s, I'm thinking of James Harden on the 76ers, Jaylen Brown on the Celtics. I'm thinking of guys like that. These are the kind of guys, I guess, Chris Paul on the Suns, for the Warriors, Klay Thompson or Draymond Green, some of those guys. I just don't feel like they have any of those kind of a player that, to me, have proven that they can step up in big moments in the playoffs, go on deep runs. And I don't know, Jalen Brunson, when he was on the Mavericks, it was yeah, he had good moments, but he had the opportunity to be the number 2. But the big critique of the Mavericks was everybody felt like they needed a number 2 and that Jalen Brunson could maybe be number 3. Julius Randle, I don't know. I just feel like I haven't seen him play with other really amazing players really in his career outside of kind of when he was in New Orleans, but that didn't last super long, and he wasn't at his peak that he is now yet. And then obviously, people might bring up the Kobe Lakers and stuff, but Kobe was on his last legs by that point, and Julius Randle too was a young guy, not what he is anywhere close. So I don't know. I feel like the Knicks are just in such a weird spot where they have a lot of number 3s. Maybe borderline number 2s, but yeah, they need some top dogs.
Yeah. So anyhow, who's your next loser for the trade deadline?
For me, it's the Raptors. We talked about them and how it was kind of confusing that they were buyers, getting Jakob Poeltl, trading a first-round pick. Once again, I think with the current landscape of the East has become incredibly competitive. With the current landscape of the East, I just don't really see them making noise. If they sneak into the playoffs, good for you, but was it worth getting Poeltl? I don't know. I just feel like, to me, I'm always in the mindset of you got to build towards a championship team. And I'm not sure what the move is in this current roster to build a championship team outside of adding another Kawhi Leonard type of trade. And I don't see that really happening. And if the goal of this team is to do that, then trading a first-round pick doesn't help you accomplish that, because that first-round pick would be valuable to go get another superstar. So I don't know. Raptors, it's not really about the value of the trade. It's not really about Jakob Poeltl as an individual player. It's about the direction of the team kind of clashing with the trade itself.
Yeah, I think an important note why a lot of people believe they were sellers, or yeah, I believe that they were sellers. Like I said, 10th in the play-in or 10th seed, so they're last in the play-in on the East. But Fred VanVleet, he's got a player option next year. Same with Gary Trent Jr. And there were a lot of talks of them, moving OG Anunoby, and I heard that they were raising the price was pretty high for him. So just hearing that, I was like, okay, so maybe they are. Made me think that at least sellers, these are in trade talks to get rid of assets. They have Otto Porter also on a player option, who we saw was a valuable role player in the playoffs off the bench. And they're holding on to him too. So just very, very interesting. And Jakob is a little bit of a risk factor too, because he doesn't have a play option. His contract goes out after this year, and he's no Kyrie Irving, but apparently they have some sort of kind of verbal hey, I've seen reports already that he's going to be willing to sign an extension with them. I mean, but you never really know in this league. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Just the direction, the choices, and the lack of activity. Maybe they feel good that VanVleet and Trent Jr. are going to opt in, and Otto Porter goes, that's fine. They can probably find another role player and via free agency or develop one. They're pretty good at that. But yeah, definitely the lack of activity and just that singular move was just odd for the Raptors. And yes, so I'm with you on that. I want to throw in, speaking of lack of activity, I want to throw in the Heat, because besides a salary dump to my Spurs with Dwayne Dedmon, really didn't do much. And this is a team that, I still think they are a threat if they make the playoffs. Like, seeding could come down, could hurt them, and I think we all felt that they kind of still needed more of either. I mentioned Sizzle with the Lakers, either Sizzle or steak and potatoes, because Kyle Lowry hasn't worked out for them. He's been a rather disappointment, to say the least. He's eating up a lot of money. Duncan Robinson, they gave him big money. He is, they really haven't been putting him on the court. Hero's been solid, but we got to see in the playoffs, not a bubble playoffs. And then we obviously have the same concerns about Bam, when in the playoffs, as if, he can still be aggressive and get his jump shot going. So, and then Jimmy Butler's great, but Jimmy Butler's getting old. He's got a lot of mileage on his legs, and I love Jimmy Butler, but, it's just, especially since Pat Riley, renowned for making moves, making big swings, not being afraid to, throwing picks and such, just, yeah, to me, I feel like they were losers just because it's kind of like we say about the NFL. Like, even going into this year, they didn't really get better. They kind of stayed the same. And we always say, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And that's kind of showing as the Heat. Right now, they're in sixth place. I know, Jimmy's missed. They have guys in and out. But in regards to especially big scale, I just like the top four seeds right now: Celtics, Bucks, Sixers, Cavs. I think they're all better than, especially roster-wise, than the Heat. And I can't sit here and say definitively that the Knicks wouldn't give them an interesting series if they had to play the Knicks. So, yeah, I want to throw in the Miami Heat, especially in regards to their lack of activity. Any other losers for you?
This one's just kind of a sad/fun one, but John Wall, individually as a player, having to go back to the Rockets once again. Finally, the contract, all that stuff. Like, the man got his money. Credit to him. The fact that he even got that contract was crazy. And honestly, as someone who was a really big fan of John Wall back when he was at his peak, it was kind of sad to see that he wasn't able to fully live up to it because of a lot of stuff that was out of his control. But the fact that he finally got to have a choice, chooses to go to the Clippers, is excited, ready to go, back to playing basketball, and then they just ship him off back to the team that he didn't want to play for, and went on some podcast and very publicly stated his distaste for. Now he's back in Houston. Who knows? I'm going to assume they're going to buy him out, because I just don't know how you play John Wall after that podcast stuff. But I don't know. The Rockets are kind of funny, so we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, John Wall, I think, is kind of an unfortunate loser of the deadline.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if they just say, just don't show up to the team facility. Just give us your mailing address. We'll send you your checks. I know this direct deposit is a joke, people, but just basically that type of just either buyout or just don't talk to us, and we'll send you your paycheck. Another loser of the trade. I know this is like a group, not like an individual person or team. Just some of the guys that kind of been living on the trade block and trade rumors this year in recent years, like John Collins. You threw him out. A guy that lives on the trade block. Miles Turner, you could throw him out, but he got an extension, so apparently Indiana's finally, quote unquote, finally committing to him. We'll see a year from now. Him and Bradley Beal are always two that have always kind of lived on the block, and then OG Anunoby too. I see why he's an intriguing talent, but we just never gonna see it. And honestly, I can understand why teams won't pony up for it because you haven't seen him be worth the multiple first round picks that it seems like they're trying to get for him for what's seeming like he may be very likely just a role player. So gonna throw him out there. Anyone else that you want to throw out before we wrap this up? Because I see there's one team with a question mark.
Yeah, so this is entirely... I have them as a potential loser because it kind of depends on what happens. But I think the Mavericks, this Kyrie thing could blow up in their face so badly. Because you traded away Dorian Finney-Smith. And this team, although they in general are solid at defense, they don't have those individual guys that it's all right, we're playing against LeBron or Steph or whoever. That's the guy we're going to put on him.
Dorian was that guy. I'm not sure if we get into that.
Oh, yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. He was that guy. He was the one. Any wing, Kawhi, LeBron, whoever you're playing in the West, in the playoffs, Dorian was the guy. And hypothetically, if they made it to the finals, Dorian was the guy to guard a Jason Tatum or whoever. Obviously, you're not going to see him guard Giannis, and he's not going to guard Steph Curry. But those wings, he was the guy. They don't have that anymore because they traded him away. I mean, maybe I think Josh Green, he a rookie they drafted, he could maybe kind of be that guy. But
still got Reggie Bullock.
I'm
checking.
They still have Reggie Bullock, but he I don't know. I got to see the Mavericks play in person, and I don't know. It felt like none of those other guys really kind of are that defensive specialist that Dorian Finney-Smith was, and Finney-Smith was also a really good shooter. So that sucks that you lose him. You also lose Spencer Dinwiddie, but I'm not too concerned about that one just because Kyrie technically directly replaces Spencer Dinwiddie's role, and I think that Kyrie's an upgrade in that regard because it's not like Spencer was providing anything crazy on defense anyway, so Kyrie's lack of defense doesn't really dramatically shift anything. But Luka Doncic signed that big contract extension, is obviously there. But how long can Luka truly go if the Mavericks are not actually competitive? And we've been preaching they need a number two. And they got a number two. And they didn't have to pay a crazy price for him. But there's a reason that price was discounted. And that is because Kyrie is the most bipolar, just blow up in your face, franchise ruining kind of a player. That's just who he is. And I know I'm a Celtics fan, and people might take that as me being salty. He said he wanted to retire in Cleveland, and then he demanded out in the midst of what was 4 straight finals appearance team, had won a championship, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of get it because maybe he saw the writing on the wall that LeBron wanted to leave. So at the time, I rationalized it. But then he goes to my Celtics, and he wants to be the guy. And all of a sudden, when he realizes that he can't be the guy, and for anyone who's played revisionist history, go look back at those stats in that series against Milwaukee, the playoffs before he left. He was terrible. The worst playoff series of his career as the guy. So then he, after saying he wants to stay in Boston, he leaves. Announced it to the whole stadium, by the way.
Yes.
Before the season started, he goes, I would, if you will have me, I would love to stay. Then he doesn't sign a contract extension, just leaves. So shout out to him. And by the way, you're your own man. You can do what you want. And by the way, I'm totally okay if you change your mind. But the way that he's gone about this, he just repeatedly commits to these franchises and then leaves. So how about you just stop saying publicly that you're going to retire there? Then he goes to the Nets. He's talking about how him and KD are going to run New York. They're going to run the team. They don't need a coach. They don't need this and that and blah, blah, blah. And they're going to get James Harden, and they're just going to outscore everybody. And there was a point that it looked like that might have been the case. That year that the Bucks won, the Nets were looking pretty dang good. But then Kyrie gets hurt, because that's kind of a thing with his career, unfortunately, is he has had some injuries. And that's the same thing with KD and Harden. All three of those players have struggled with injuries at different points in their career, and the health just didn't line up. And then you would think, well, okay, that's fine. Like, one bad year of injuries, they can make it work the next year. But then all of a sudden, James Harden doesn't even want to play with those guys because Kyrie Irving can't get this COVID thing under wraps. He's not even playing with the team, and because he wants to, make a protest, which is, fine, stand up for your beliefs, but you're directly impacting the other guys on your team to the point that James Harden wanted to leave. Like, he did not want to be there anymore. He just didn't want to deal with the BS of Kyrie Irving. And then Kevin Durant demands a trade. I know that he hasn't thrown Kyrie under the bus publicly, but Kyrie's just a weird dude, and I wouldn't be surprised if their kind of vibes eventually just wore off when the success wasn't there. And then Kyrie obviously has now left the Nets. So all I'm saying is they traded for a player who has that track record. His contract expires after the season. As you said earlier, there's already been some kind of public rumors that he might want to go to Phoenix. So there's that. And who knows, maybe the Mavericks will pull off a sign-in trade or something, and so they can get something out of it. But there's a very real possibility that Kyrie just walks away, and the Mavericks just traded their best defensive player and a pretty decent guard and some draft compensation for a guy who showed up for half a season, didn't turn them into a title team, assuming they don't win a championship right now. And then just dips. Like, that's a very real possibility. And honestly, that's the possibility I think is going to happen. I think Kyrie's just going to leave because I don't think that the Mavericks thing with him and Luka is necessarily going to work out that well. I do think it's an upgrade for the team, but I don't think it fixes some of the issues that they already had. I think it fixes the one that they needed another shot creator, and that's amazing, but they still have some issues on the rest of the roster. And if in 2 or 3 years, when the Mavericks, if Kyrie has left and the Mavericks are still not able to build a successful team around Luka and he demands a trade, I wouldn't be shocked. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, or if he just straight leaves, and then they can't get the number 2 that they've been looking for because, I want to add on, like, didn't trade away Tim Hardaway Jr. I know he's kind of been there a while, but $19 million, like, I'm not playing. I feel like you get other guys playing at that level, at a higher level, that can do more roles at that price. Even Davis Bertans, he's at kind of an albatross, 16,000. He's, I would say an average, above average shooter. Love him. He's a former Spur, but it's not worth 16 in my opinion if I was GM. And then I know people maybe trying to argue with you, like, oh, Markieff Morris can be a good defender, but no, like, he can be a good defender, but not, I don't think he can be, like you said, the guy that you're going to sick on their best offensive player, wing player for 30 minutes this game. Yes, he's not going to stop the other guy, but he will make life hard for him. I don't think Markieff is that guy. I think he's just solid whenever the opportunity comes in front of him. He won't be a cone.
Yeah. LeBron, Kawhi, Paul George, Durant, like, these are the forwards you're potentially coming up against in the West. And these guys are not scared of Markieff Morris. Like, especially considering that at his age, there's no way that man is guarding those guys 40 minutes a night. Like, it's not going to happen. So,
yeah. And then, like,
I think he's a good piece, but not as your primary wing defender.
And just go down the roster. I know Christian Wood, but Christian Wood's more of an offensive, I feel like, force. And Frank Ntilikina, defensive guard, but he's he's not a great offensive piece. So
incredibly limited offensively.
Yes, as why that didn't work out with New York. So I'm with you. There is reason for concern for the Dallas, especially long term, and even this year. Like we've mentioned before, our concerns with Luka. It's a lot of, like, James Harden, very Luka based. You mentioned his usage percentage or usage rate last podcast, and I'm sure Kyrie will help that, but it's just going to be interesting. Late games, when they're both share the floor, how will the offense flow? I'm sure they could, there's going to be a couple games where, they win them because they got in their spots, but especially come playoff time, we mentioned when teams can just game plan just for you, and they take one away or something. It's tough to win off ISO ball, like we've mentioned before. I haven't seen enough to be confident that Luka can play off ball in moments, and the kind of same with Kyrie, or even this offense, like their system can do that because it's just been so Luka heavy. So I think that would be crucial for Jason Kidd too, who I know he had a great year last year, but I was kind of skeptic of the hire, and we'll see what happens this playoffs. But like we kind of mentioned last episode, kind of had I know they're fourth in the West right now, but I think that's because the West is just a mess in general because of those injuries. I won't be shocked if they fall a bit, but who knows? This is one of those. It's kind of like Brooklyn again, where Dallas they get into the dance, and who knows? Maybe an injury or two falls their way as long as those two stay healthy. But I'm with you. The concerns are real. I would not put my money on. Not that I do put money. I would not put my money on Dallas in regards to title odds. It's just scary.
And all I'm saying is the hater in me of Kyrie, I'll admit it. I'm a Kyrie hater at this point. The hater in me, and also I'm not a big Luka fan. It would just there would probably be some sick, twisted sense of satisfaction if Kyrie left and basically brought the downfall of Luka leaving too, and just proving everything I thought about him right. Like that I don't know. I don't know. I'm a weird person, I guess, but I'm a Kyrie hater.
And in regards to that, I just want to. I forgot if I sent it to our group chat. There's that one where someone replaced there's that little kid that's like kind of smiling evilly in front of the burning building, but they replaced it with Kyrie's. So that's why I feel like what basically you're kind of summarizing could potentially happen here too.
It brought me so much satisfaction when the Celtics made the finals before Kyrie did, even though Kyrie left to form this super team with Harden and Durant. And the Celtics, who did it the right way, just building their team through the draft, brought back Al Horford, all that kind of stuff, made it back before Kyrie did. That brought me some satisfaction, and so Kyrie just tearing another franchise down to the ground, I don't know, it kind of bring me some satisfaction, I guess.
Before we sign off, I wanted to add to, you mentioned some of the missteps him and Kevin did. Remember, they also lobbied for DeAndre Jordan. He was supposed to be like the third piece, remember, because he still had some value. Then they like crazy overpaid him, and it did not work out. Luckily, Nick Claxton, they drafted and developed him, but that did not work out either. Kyrie and KD.
And I just want to add too on that. The whole reason, and Nets fans are very publicly against Steve Nash at a certain point. Like, they turned on him. They're like, he's a bad head coach. Just keep in mind that Ime Udoka, the coach, which I know that he's kind of dealing with his issues and off-the-court stuff and blah, blah, blah. And he almost became the Nets head coach, but it didn't end up happening. But he was on the staff in Brooklyn, and the Celtics just ripped him away and went straight to the finals with him. And he was literally in there with Brooklyn under Steve Nash, and because they were like, we don't need a head coach, all this kind of stuff, they hire Nash, and Nash is just kind of in this incredibly awkward spot. They're like, you have to manage these three massive egos, and at any point, all of them have had a track record of leaving their franchises, and so you think that they could too. So like,
and it's Nash's first coaching job too. On top of that, so you're asking a lot.
So he can't,
out of a first-time head coach.
He can't just focus on basketball. He has to focus on making Kyrie, KD, and Harden happy, which could have hurt his basketball intuition because the way that Nash played in his career was nothing like those three players. And so I don't know. I'm really interested to see what he does next if he ever coaches again. I hope he does because I think he's a better coach than he showed in that team. But I don't know. I just do find it funny that they were very like, we don't need a head coach before they got Nash. And then I think they got Nash because they didn't want some like hard head experienced guy to come in there and tell them how to play. They just wanted to do their own thing, and hopefully Nash would just let them. And then of course they're sitting there getting out coached by Budenholzer and Udoka and some of these other guys. So just funny.
Yeah, and just to sprinkle on the Nets for good news, I do like Jacque Vaughn. He's actually did pretty solid this year. And just unfortunate that now he walks into his locker room and it seems like Ben Simmons is now the guy in Brooklyn, at least for the time being, or until the end of the season, until maybe something happens there.